Hello, this is Daniel Raymond, the voice behind Ray's Guide. This week it was an Inside Star Citizen Q&A regarding the narrative and the discussion of this sort of thing, but also what nuances can be added or expanded on in the future. So this will be my own lore crafting and theory crafting. That, again, is just mine. No promise that any particular item of this will be in the game, and if it does, I'll just be presuming that it is the creative minds creating alike. So go ahead and steal as much of this as you like, lore team at CIG. But first, some theory crafting.
The Regen Crisis was introduced in 4.1.
Like, as much as they tested the technology before it came out, once you increase the sample size to several billion, it started really quickly, like, kind of showing the cracks, and all of a sudden...
They were intentionally coy about whether this event sequence was going to lead to Death of a Spaceman.
Is the Regen Crisis a precursor to Death of a Spaceman? Is this, when this storyline wraps, will it have some effect on Death of a Spaceman when it gets introduced?
I mean, don't want to spoil.
But we all know that DOAS is still part of the long-term plan, so nobody's being fooled by this. But they also seem to be always keeping it just around the corner. And there's a simple reason for this. Not every profession in Star Citizen dies at the same rate. Racing, in particular, is based on the idea of pushing yourself constantly to the edge and crashing and dying. Not far behind is mercenary work. There needs to be some reason why deaths in, so for example, racing are or can be made less costly. Tied to this is the idea that Star Citizen needs to have some sort of reason to not simply have medical mechanics, but some reason to specialize as a doctor. I've discussed this in prior videos, and rediscussing them would also take an entire video. But it seems like something I should revisit and add in my prior videos about this.
Even if they didn't necessarily want to give it to Wikelo, you had the option of going to Rayari if you wanted the items instead of the money.
They were dismissive of the fact that regeneration failures and appearance of Wikelo in the verse was just A and B storylines, happening concurrently, and that adding Wikelo and collection gameplay meant that there need to be things you couldn't just go and trade for terminal and buy, so they were just being economical with development time and not having to develop two sets of new unique ores. Well, all this may be true, but good storytelling never wastes a chance to engage the audience and to make the story more interesting. So a coincidence should never be just left as a coincidence, much the same way as Chekhov says the gun on the shelf must always, at some point, be fired. It is just compact storytelling. Sure, at the end of the story, it might have been just a coincidence, but until then, it is either a twist or a red herring. Sure, maybe Wikelo is just selling the same stuff to Rayari themselves, but maybe not. Sure, we are friends with the Banu, for now, but nothing can be presumed to be forever, and in any interspecies confrontation, the side that cannot be killed has a huge strategic advantage. Not only that, but a species that breeds but never dies will grow exponentially in their territorial needs. And that can be a problem. So maybe Friendly Quickie Wikelo is here to learn how maybe to have the Banu gain the immortality of the Ibrahim spheres, or maybe how to interfere with it. Or maybe he already has. Or maybe it is just a red herring. But it's an interesting thought, which is always superior to no interesting thought.
Establishing that, if someone starts playing the game in 3 months, their experience to things, when talking to somebody who's been playing it this entire time is going to be a little different, because the people who've been playing this entire time go, oh, well, you should have seen it, and there was this regen tech, and it used to work, and now it doesn't work, and blah, blah, blah.
On the subject of whether these events like Align and Mine are repeatable, the response was interesting. Some of this content will never be repeated. Some will be repeated, and others will become permanent extensions of the environment, which means that they will never be new again, which I think is a genius move because it represents another answer to the question, why put up with a game in its adolescence phase, which is clearly where Star Citizen is. Because just like a person, it will only be an adolescent once. Sure, they might be wiser and more stable when they are an adult, but you don't get to see them when they first manifested that trait, or did that weird emo phase, or whatever. I've been wondering when they are going to find a way to bring back Port Olisar, but maybe they shouldn't. Maybe they should let having experienced Port Olisar be something unique for those who backed early, and in the process have people feel that there will be FOMO over missing the things that are happening now. That may never happen again, and even if they continue to happen, will never actually again be new. Then again, there's a considerable time spent talking about Pyro and the so-called
The Pyro solution, right?
problem of Pyro. And that gave an idea about what a new major or minor storyline about Pyro can be. And file this one under Be Careful What You Wish For.
Because we've established for a long time the Citizens for Prosperity who are out there who are like, if we just resettle Pyro, we can turn it around. If there's more economic development here, then the UEE will care more, then we'll get more resources, more funds, and we can make it safe, and in turn make the neighboring system safer. And that's their plan.
The central fact of this idea is that when a company goes bankrupt, ownership of the assets does not simply vaporize. Depending on the detail of the bankruptcy law, if they were collateralized for a loan, then they would be seized by the lender. Otherwise, ownership goes to a receiver who would sell the assets, often for pennies on a dollar basis, to satisfy creditors. So the main characteristics and surprise of this potential storyline I'm thinking of is a consortium of wealthy investors. Some who have been quietly inhabiting the boardrooms of some of the largest corporations in the verse, others completely unheard of and even more wealthy, announcing that they have formed a new privately held corporation that holds all the assets of Pyrotechnic Amalgamated, including the name. And they say that they literally now own Ruin Station, Checkmate, Obituate, all the rest stops, and all the outposts if they are on land that was once developed by Pyrotechnic Amalgamated. Moreover, this new Pyrotechnic Amalgamated has announced a joint venture with Hurston Dynamics, with the goal of productizing and deploying Hurston's cutting-edge planetary management expertise on a contracted basis. On the other hand, no shortage of folks in Pyro, even Citizens for Prosperity folks, are saying, heck no, you don't own Pyro. We own Pyro under adverse possession. But to actually own something under adverse possession, you both need a legal system and a legal system that recognizes, for example, the headhunters as a legitimate entity. Neither of which, of course, is the case. Meanwhile, the new Pyrotechnic Amalgamated is offering long-term leases at what they regard as an attractive rate to the existing occupants of any location if they recognize Pyrotechnic Amalgamated's authority.
Bend the knee.
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 Bend the knee and join me.
Of course, if they don't, then they will be regarded as trespassers and
Dracarys.
Bear in mind that in this scenario, it will be us, presumably lawful players, that will be taking missions to be the dragon. Which brings us to the question,
are we the baddies?
But the bigger question is who actually is behind this reborn Pyrotechnic Amalgamated, and where did they get all this money out of apparently nowhere? Eventually, genetic analysis will reveal that this group is actually the great-great-great-grandchildren of Fiona Messer, who disappeared without a trace, and apparently the wealth represents a century and a half of compounded gains of the collected Messer family stash in rare and unique items quietly secured and hidden over centuries of Messer rule. But where could someone disappear so completely from the UEE and also find a way to sell and leverage such a massive stash of rare items also untraceably? Where indeed? Which leaves the UEE in a quandary. There is nothing to charge this current generation of Messers for crimes of centuries ago, but the idea of the Messers once again controlling an entire star system within human space is, well, disturbing. What would they do? What can they do? How will it turn out? And that's my little attempt at lore crafting. I hope it was interesting. Now, for an update on my giveaways, first I'll be announcing some special giveaways in the captains in a revised See You at CitizenCon package. And then we have our special skills contest for channel members to earn a chance at a Mariah Guardian and a Misk Fortune. Just a couple days left on that. A little video can get you a nice ship. Then we have the annual IAE Week giveaway coming up for the shiny stainless steel serious shipping ship, the Starlancer Max. And then the Grow the Channel ship giveaway at 20,000 subscribers for the winner's choice of the marvelous multi-role multiplayer mining meta, the Arasta, or the new big box bargain bazaar, the Merchantman. One entry per video. Members are entered automatically. Everyone else just subscribe and comment with the secret word. And the secret word for this video is the legal principle in my speculative scenario that would say that the headhunters get to keep the places in Pyro that they occupy. Fly safe, keep it real. I'll see you in the verse. This is Daniel Raymond for Ray's Guide.